I still remember the sound that changed everything. The last bus pulling away from the stop, splashing cold Chicago rain onto my shoes, and then a faint cry drifting through the empty street like a warning. I was exhausted after another double shift at the diner, my jacket soaked through, my mind full of rent notices and my grandmother's medicine bills. But that soft cry cut through everything. It pulled me in before I even knew what I was doing. When I found her, she looked completely out of place in my part of the city. A little girl in a soaked designer dress, sitting under a shop awning with tears running down her cheeks. Her small body shook from cold and fear. She backed away the moment I knelt beside her. She looked at me like she didn't know if I was safe or dangerous. "My name is Juliet. I won't hurt you," I told her gently. I held my hand out, palm up, the way you approach a scared animal. She studied my face with surprising focus, almost like she could see what kind of person I was. Then thunder cracked overhead. She flinched, reached out and whispered, "I want my daddy." Quote, Before I could say another word, a black sedan rolled by. It slowed when it reached us. The windows were tinted, but I felt eyes on us, watching, waiting. The little girl's fingers dug into my hand, like she was begging me not to let go. I didn't think. I just acted. I lifted her into my arms and slipped into the alley beside the shop. The sedan door cracked open and then shut again. It crawled forward like a predator searching for a scent. "They took me from school," she whispered against my neck. "Bad men said Daddy would pay lots of money." My heart dropped. None of this felt random. Kids like her didn't end up alone in the rain. Someone wanted something. Something big. I thought about running to the diner, since the back door was always unlocked. But the sedan returned at the end of the street, searching, moving slow, too slow. "Hold on tight," I whispered. "Stay quiet." I knew these alleys. I had lived in this neighborhood long enough to learn every shortcut. I moved fast, keeping close to the walls, trying to breathe through the storm of fear inside my chest. The little girl's body trembled against mine. I felt her heartbeat hammering against my own. As I carried her, a bracelet on her wrist caught the dim streetlight, a small diamond charm. A crest. My breath froze. The Buchanan family crest. Everyone in Chicago knew it. Everyone feared the man who owned it. Maxwell Buchanan. The most powerful mafia boss in the city. The child in my arms was his daughter. No wonder the sedan was hunting her. By the time I reached my small apartment, she was asleep on my shoulder. Her trust broke something open in me. I didn't go to the diner. I didn't call anyone. I just wanted her warm and safe for one night to breathe. Inside, I wrapped her in my only clean blanket. She looked so small on my old couch. Her bracelet read a single name, Ivy. My heart ached for her the way it ached for my grandmother when she cried from pain. I checked her temperature, rubbed her arms warm, and tried to calm my nerves. I had no plan, no understanding of what I had just stepped into. Then a knock sounded at my door. Soft at first, then louder. No one visited me, ever. I looked through the peephole, empty hall. But I felt someone there, watching. Fear ripped through me. I grabbed the only weapon I owned, a cast-iron skillet. My grandmother used to joke that it could knock sense into anyone. The lock clicked. The door swung open. A tall man stepped inside, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His hand rested inside his jacket, like he was ready to pull a gun. His cold eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ivy. Something in his face cracked. A flash of relief. "Step away from her," he ordered. 2 more men filled the hallway behind him. I stepped between them and Ivy, skillet raised. Before anything else happened, Ivy jumped off the couch. "Uncle Philip!" she cried, rushing into his arms. He knelt and held her tight, his expression soft for a moment, before turning sharp again when he looked at me. "Who are you, and how did my niece end up here?" "She saved me," Ivy said before I could speak. "She carried me away. She kept me safe." His eyes stayed locked on mine, cold, calculating, suspicious. "You knew who she was," he said, "yet you brought her here and didn't ask for money." Before I could explain, the lights shut off. The entire building sank into darkness. His men drew their weapons instantly. A bullet shattered my window. Glass rained across the floor. "Move!" Philip shouted. His men surrounded Ivy. Another shot hit my wall. Everything happened fast after that. We grabbed what we could. Ivy curled into my arms again. Philip covered us as he guided us out the fire escape. Rain slicked the metal under our feet. Shadows moved in the alley below. When we reached the ground, a black SUV waited. I hesitated. This was the point where my life changed forever. I could feel it. Ivy slipped her tiny hand into mine. "Please," she whispered, "come with me." I climbed inside. My fate sealed itself shut with the sound of the car door closing. Ahead of me waited the mansion of the city's most dangerous man. And the moment he learned that a broke diner waitress had carried his crying daughter to safety, my world would never be the same again. The drive to the Buchanan mansion felt unreal. I sat in the back seat with Ivy curled against me, her small hand gripping mine like I was the only safe thing in her world. Philip sat in front, speaking quietly into an earpiece, his tone sharp and urgent. The SUV sped through dark Chicago streets, and every few seconds he checked the mirrors like he expected danger to appear at any moment. When we entered the Gold Coast neighborhood, everything changed. The houses became bigger, the streets cleaner, the world richer. The SUV turned through iron gates taller than any building on my block. Security cameras followed us. Armed guards nodded as we passed. I felt completely out of place in my soaked diner uniform. Inside the mansion, everything shimmered. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, staff that moved silently like ghosts. Ivy held onto my hand as we walked, skipping with relief now that she was home. I had never been in a house with chandeliers before. I had never even touched marble floors. I kept wiping my shoes on the rug, afraid to track mud on something priceless. We stopped at a huge oak door. Philip didn't knock gently. He knocked once, hard. Then he pushed it open. The man inside stood up fast. Maxwell Buchanan. He didn't look like a monster. He didn't look like the headlines. He didn't look like the man people feared in every corner of the city. He looked like a father. When he saw Ivy, his eyes softened so much that my chest tightened. He crossed the room in seconds and scooped her into his arms like he had been holding his breath all night. "Princess," he whispered. His voice was deep, controlled, but the emotion in it made Ivy cling to him and cry into his neck. He held her so close I wondered if he would ever let her go again. Then his eyes found me. The softness disappeared. "You're the waitress from the diner on 35th, he said. I froze. How did he know me? Why did a man like him know who I was? "You've been watching me?" I asked before I could stop myself. His expression didn't change. He was unreadable again. "I watch everyone in my territory." His tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "And I pay attention to people who turn down my brother's job offers multiple times." Quote, "You tried to hire me?" I asked Philip. He didn't answer. The answer was in his silence. I looked back at Maxwell. "I didn't know she was your daughter," I said. "I didn't do it for money." Something flickered across his face. Not anger, not suspicion. Something quieter. Something almost like respect. Before he could say more, the door burst open. "Inside help," one guard said. The Cardelli family had inside help at the school. Someone gave them her schedule. Maxwell's jaw clenched so hard that the air in the room shifted. The dangerous man from the news resurfaced in the set of his shoulders and the ice in his eyes. Then Philip turned to me. "Your apartment is compromised. Police found 2 dead men across the street, Cardelli hitmen." My knees weakened. Everything inside me dropped. My life was gone in an instant. My home, my safety, everything. Maxwell stepped closer. "Your grandmother is being moved to a private facility right now," he said. "She will be safe." My breath caught. My grandmother. He'd already thought of her. Then alarms exploded through the mansion. A guard ran in. "Ivy's having an allergic reaction. Someone slipped peanut oil into her snack." Maxwell didn't hesitate. He lifted Ivy into his arms and ran. I ran after them. At the hospital, I watched him pace outside the emergency room with his hands clenched into fists. The most powerful man in Chicago could destroy anyone with a word, but he couldn't help his own daughter in that moment. His fear cracked through the walls he kept around himself. Hours passed before the doctor came out. "She's stable. She'll be okay." Maxwell covered his face briefly, relief hitting him like a wave. When he looked at me, something changed. Something deep. Something I didn't understand yet. "Why are you still here?" he asked softly. "Because I couldn't leave her. Because I felt like she needed me. Because something about this child had already taken root inside my heart." "I can help care for her," I said. "I've taken care of my grandmother for years. I know how to watch someone closely. I know emergencies. And no one would ever expect a diner waitress to be a nanny for the Buchanan family. It would keep her safer." He studied me with an intensity that made my pulse race. "You're already in this world now," he said. "The Cardellis saw your face. Walking away won't make you invisible again." I knew he was right. My old life vanished the second I picked Ivy up off that sidewalk. A week later, I stood in the Buchanan mansion again, this time as Ivy's nanny. The staff watched me with confusion, some with suspicion, some with curiosity. None of them understood why Maxwell Buchanan had brought a broke waitress into his inner circle. But Ivy didn't care. Every morning she ran to me like I was the only person she trusted besides her father. And Maxwell, he watched us. He watched me, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with something I didn't dare name. But something was changing. In him, in me, in the dangerous world I had stepped into without knowing it. And none of us knew what was coming next. Living in the Buchanan mansion changed me in ways I didn't expect. Not because of the wealth or the luxury. Those things never felt like mine. What changed me was Ivy. She attached herself to me like a shadow. She held my hand everywhere we went. She asked me to tuck her into bed every night. She wanted me beside her at breakfast, during her lessons, and during every scared moment when the house creaked or thunder rolled outside. Some days I forgot she wasn't my child. Other days I remembered too well, especially when Maxwell watched us from the doorway with an expression I couldn't read. It wasn't cold or threatening or distant. It was something deeper, something that scared me more than gunshots or dark alleys. It was tenderness, the kind that could break me if I let it. One evening, Ivy practiced her piano in the music room. Her small fingers moved carefully across the keys. I sat beside her, guiding her hands. Maxwell stood behind us with his hands in his pockets, watching quietly. His suit jacket hung open. His tie was loose. He looked less like a Mafia kingpin and more like a tired father, trying to remember how to breathe. "She never played like this before," he said softly. "She just needed someone beside her," I replied. When Ivy finished, she looked back at me with pride. "Did I do good?" "You did amazing," I told her. Maxwell's eyes softened. "She really listens to you." I felt my cheeks warm. She just needed stability. He held my gaze for a moment too long. We all did. I didn't know how to respond to that. His stare made my heart beat differently, like it didn't belong to me anymore. That night, alarms ripped me out of sleep. Loud, sharp, terrifying. A pounding echo shook the mansion walls. Lights flashed down the hallway. Before I could stand fully, my bedroom door burst open. Philip stood there with a gun drawn and urgency in his eyes. "Get Ivy," he ordered. "Now. We're under attack." I didn't hesitate. I ran to Ivy's room. She was already awake, clutching her teddy bear, her big blue eyes wide with fear but not surprise. This wasn't her first emergency. That realization alone nearly broke me. "It's okay," I whispered, lifting her into my arms. "I'm here." We followed Philip into the hidden passage behind her closet. Cold air swept around us as we hurried down the dim tunnel. Footsteps echoed somewhere behind us, shouting. The sound of gunfire in the mansion above. I held Ivy tighter. She buried her face in my neck. Philip stopped suddenly. He raised his hand for silence. I froze. The air felt too still, too wrong. "They're in the tunnels," he whispered. Ivy's small fingers tightened around my shirt. We ducked into a side alcove so Philip could call Maxwell. His voice was low and urgent. "Change of plan. We're heading to the garage. Meet at location 3. My heart raced. I didn't know what location 3 was. I didn't ask. I just followed. But when we stepped into the underground garage, everything exploded into chaos. A gunshot cracked across the concrete. Philip was hit first. The bullet slammed into his shoulder, spinning him backward. He gritted his teeth and fired back with his good arm while yelling at us to run. His blood hit the floor in thick red drops. "No," I said, dropping Ivy behind a pillar. "You'll bleed out." I pressed my hands to his wound, ripping fabric from my nightgown and tying it tight. My hands shook, but I worked fast, the way I did when my grandmother collapsed once years ago. Philip stared at me with stunned disbelief. "You should have run." "I'm not leaving you," I said. "Can you still shoot?" He lifted his gun with his good hand. "Yes." "Then cover us," I told him. "I'll get her to the truck." The air filled with bullets as I scooped Ivy into my arms and sprinted for the armored SUV. Philip laid down fire as I opened the door and shoved Ivy inside. I returned for him, dragging him toward the vehicle while he tried to keep firing. His weight nearly pulled me down, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Once he was inside, I jumped into the driver's seat. The engine rumbled under my hands. I'd never driven a car this expensive, or this fast, or during a gunfight, but I had no choice. The garage door opened automatically as the SUV recognized the security code. I slammed my foot on the gas. Bullets cracked behind us. One shattered the rear window. I kept driving. I didn't look back. The mansion lit up behind us with orange flames as I sped through the night. Ivy sobbed in the back seat. Philip grunted in pain. My own heartbeat roared in my ears, drowning out everything else. By the time we reached the safe house, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the door. Maxwell ran out the second he saw the SUV headlights. He grabbed Ivy and held her so tightly she squealed. "Daddy!" she cried. "Juliet saved us. She saved Uncle Philip. She saved me again." It was the second time that night I watched all the hardness leave Maxwell's face. He turned to me slowly, like he needed a second to process everything. "You saved my brother," he said. Then, softer, "You saved my daughter twice." He stepped closer. His voice dropped. "You saved my family." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. His presence made the chaos fade for a moment. His eyes were darker than night, filled with something I wasn't ready for but couldn't look away from. I didn't know it then, but nothing between us would ever be the same after that night, and nothing inside me would ever be the same either. Life at the lake house felt unreal at first. The mansion was gone. The staff was gone. Everything familiar in Ivy's world had been torn away in one night. But she settled into the quiet space like a flower finding new ground. She slept easier with me nearby. She smiled more when Maxwell was around. And she held my hand whenever we walked near the water. Philip recovered slowly. His shoulder remained stiff, but his confidence in me changed completely. He no longer watched me like a threat. He watched me like someone who had earned a place no outsider ever reached. Maxwell changed too. He wasn't softer. Men like him never become soft. But he became different with me. More human. More open. Less guarded. Some nights, after Ivy fell asleep, he brought me tea on the deck. We looked over the dark lake together, the moon reflecting on the water like a silver secret only we shared. "You've changed things," he said one night. His voice was calm, but the words felt heavier than the still air. "Ivy laughs now. She sleeps through the night. She's a child again." I didn't know what to say. The sincerity in his tone pulled at something deep inside me. "You gave her life back," he added. "You're the one who protects her," I said softly. He turned toward me, his eyes steady. "And you're the one who makes her feel safe." The way he looked at me made my breath catch. It wasn't cold or calculating. It wasn't distant or dangerous. It was something warm, something I hadn't seen directed at me in years, something a man gave only when he trusted you with more than his life. I didn't know what to do with that look, but I knew it scared me more than any gunshot ever had. Weeks passed. Ivy grew stronger, happier, smarter. She adored learning, especially when I taught her reading or helped her solve puzzles. Watching her grow felt like watching a new life take shape in my arms. Maxwell saw it too. He started asking me to sit in on business meetings at the lake house, meetings about his legal companies, his investments, his restaurants. He listened to my ideas. He took my advice. He let me challenge him in ways no one else dared. "You see things my team misses," he told me. "You think like someone who has lived the life my employees pretend to understand." Before I knew it, I became more than Ivy's nanny. I became Maxwell's advisor. But the deeper I stepped into his world, the more I learned about its shadows. How thin the line was between his legal business and the darkness beneath it. How the betrayal that nearly cost Ivy her life had come from inside his own walls, and how much it haunted him. "You shouldn't trust so easily," Philip warned me one afternoon. "You're already too important to Ivy and to my brother." My heart stumbled at his words. Too important. What did that mean? I found out the answer one night when Maxwell asked me to walk with him along the frozen lake shore. Snow crunched under our boots. Our breath formed white clouds. Ivy's laughter drifted faintly from inside the house as she played with one of the guards. Maxwell stopped, staring out over the dark water. "When I lost my wife," he said quietly, "I promised myself never to need anyone again. Need makes you weak. Need gives enemies something to use against you." Quote. His hands were in his coat pockets, but his entire body looked tense, vulnerable, not like the man the city feared, like the man who feared losing the only person he loved. "I didn't expect you," he continued. My heart beat painfully under my ribs. "I didn't plan for someone like you." The cold air suddenly felt warm enough to melt snow. "You came into our lives by accident, but now," he exhaled slowly. "Now my daughter looks for you first when she's scared. My brother trusts you, and I find myself thinking about you more than I should." The world around us felt silent and unreal. "Maxwell," I whispered, unsure what to say. He stepped closer, not intimidating, not forceful, just close enough that I felt the heat from his coat. "I don't know if I deserve someone like you," he said, "but I know this family is stronger with you in it, safer with you in it, happier with you in it." His hand brushed mine gently, like he was afraid to push too far too fast. "I want you here," he said, "not as Ivy's nanny, not as my employee, but as someone who matters to us, someone who matters to me." His honesty hit me harder than any danger we had faced. I thought of Ivy's hand in mine. I thought of Maxwell staying by my grandmother's side in the hospital when I was too afraid to leave Ivy. I thought of how he trusted my voice when making decisions that shaped entire companies. And I thought of how my heart felt when he entered a room. "You already matter to me," I admitted. His eyes softened in a way I had never seen before. Then his hand touched my cheek gently, and I leaned into his warmth without thinking. His kiss was soft, careful, like he was giving me a choice instead of taking one. For the first time since that rainy night, I felt safe too. Months later, when the new mansion was finished, the three of us walked down the grand staircase together, hand in hand, Maxwell on one side, Ivy on the other. Guests whispered as we passed. They didn't know who I was. Not yet. But they would. Because Maxwell leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Your grandmother was right about my intentions. But they're honorable now." Quote, then he took my hand and said something that changed my life more than any gunshot or rescue ever had. I was thinking about marriage. "If you're ready to make this permanent." In that moment, I knew the truth. I hadn't just saved Ivy's life. I had saved all of ours.